Good evening. It is now 7 p.m. and I would like to start the meeting of the General Services Committee. This meeting is the postponed meeting of the 24th of February 2026. Apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Maurice Cook, with Councillor Cliff Holloway substituting for her tonight. Item 2, do members approve the minutes of the 3rd of February 2026 meeting? See nobody indicating not, so we'll take those as approved. Item 3, declarations of interest. Does anybody have a declaration of interest for the meeting tonight? No. Okay, then moving on to item 4, appointment of a new chief executive. Can I ask Dr. Dave Smith to introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. The leader made representations to the Secretary of State asking for a permission to allow the council to appoint its own chief executive. That request was supported by us as commissioners in our report to the Secretary of State, recognising the progress that the council had made over a period of time in addressing some of the fundamental issues at play arising out of the best value review. And whilst commissioners continue to consider that the council is failing in its best value duties as a consequence of its debt, it does recognise that in a range of areas around governance, leadership and service delivery, that significant progress has been made over the last 3 years. And it seems appropriate that whilst intervention will continue to 2028, that the council should have the ability to appoint its own chief exec. Ministers agreed though with that approach, with the caveat being that if the council is unable to find a suitable, experienced candidate, then obviously the current model will continue to operate in the council. As we've done over the last 3 years, as commissioners, we intend to work with members in the same vein as we worked in each of senior appointments that have been made, in that we'll work together to seek a consensus on a preferred candidate, consistent with the model that we felt has worked well in our deliberations on other appointments over the past period of time. The substance of the report sets out a realistic timetable for the appointment process, and I apologise that we delayed the original meeting, but obviously with the announcement of the elections, that impacted directly on the timetable, and also we had to take account of the need to ensure that an incoming administration post-election is capable of taking this forward, and a full council meeting is able to ratify it post-election. There is a mistake in the recommendation, Chair, I'll just draw to your attention, in that it currently says in 2.1, the annual council meeting, July 2026. I would ask you to delete the annual council meeting, because the timetable is to take ratification of an appointment to full council in July 2026 council meeting. So we tried to take account of the election timetable, ensure that, as I say, a new administration post-election is fully engaged in the process, and to take account of when a council meeting can occur to ratify any outcome from the appointments process. We're simply asking the committee today to agree the outline timetable in order that we can take forward that timetable inside the council, along with the work that we're doing with the external support that we've got to in the search for appropriate candidates for the council to consider.
Thank you, Dr. Dave. Neil? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a number of concerns. Firstly, I find it quite strange to see this report that starts off in the future tense. For example, you've got 4.3 talks about the procurement of an executive search agency to lead the recruitment will ensure, so we're talking about something that is still to happen. You go to 4.4 and you find that a recruitment agency has already been appointed. Now, I would have thought that it was a decision of this committee as to whether we were going to, because as Dr. David just said, you know, we're here to discuss the timetable. Well, the timetable's already been implemented, and you've already spent money appointing an agency. Who authorised doing that, and why? That's a major concern for me, because what is the point of bringing us in here and asking us questions and asking us to look at a timetable when you've already set down the first road of it? I just find it incredibly strange. You've actually appointed a company. So I find that very strange. I also find it strange, and if you look back to the recent full council meeting that we had, when I moved a motion without notice, because I believe that we don't need, it's my personal opinion, I believe we don't need to recruit a new chief executive. We've got a perfectly able senior leadership team that is now going to have 2 years to basically just hold the council together while everything else changes. So the chances that we're going to recruit here, we're talking about July. So by the time you get somebody in, you're probably talking, if there's a notice period, back end of the year. So the person who comes in is going to be here for a very short period of time. To me, it's nonsensical. It makes presumptions that good people will want to come for that short period of time. And I don't think that they will. I think it's a transient thing. As I said, I would like to move a different recommendation, and Mr. Fenwick made the point at full council meeting that I should bring it to the GSC. So, you know, I would like to propose that we actually do something completely different. And I've got a motion written down, or a recommendation written down, so I'd like to propose an amendment to the recommendation. But I'd also like an answer on the first point that I made, about why we've already started the process without permission of this committee.
Sorry, I'll just repeat what I said. In terms of dealing with the issue of the different tenses used in the document, it's because the executive search has not started yet, because we want the timing of the search to be at the optimum stage in the process leading up to consideration of candidates and appointments process post-election. But you're quite right that in the second part it's in the past tense, because we have appointed an exec search company to do that research. That decision was taken by commissioners using their powers that exist under the intervention. With regard to the rationale about seeking to have a chief exec appointment, the considerations that were given as part of this was, obviously it's a ministerial direction to give the council the power to do that, and we're honouring that commitment. And secondly, and more specifically as regards the council, when you consider the range of challenges that this council now has to deal with over the next 2 years, and the most obvious ones, but not the sole ones, are things like the finding of a further £30 million of budget savings, the completion of the transformation programme, both to help towards those budget savings and to make the council fit for purpose for local government reorganisation, supporting and assisting post-election administration, of which we, of course, do not know the outcome of the election, but what we can say with a fair degree of certainty is that the new council will involve a lot of new members of council who will need a great deal of support in their development to play their full part in the council's programme. Then, of course, we've got local government reorganisation itself to work on. We have devolution, which will be coming back after, for the council to consider after after the election period. And of course, we've got the details of continuing to negotiate with MHCLG and the Treasury on future relief on the debt. So they're just some of the headlines as to why this council has an enormous amount of detailed work to do and very strategic, impactful work to continue to do over the next 2 years. And in that context, it's appropriate to appoint a chief exec to lead the organisation through that very challenging period. My second point is really that, in my opinion and in the opinion of other commissioners, the current senior leadership team, which are very competent and doing a good job, are also fully occupied in the work that they're doing in all their different roles, and to attempt to layer onto that same person or persons the responsibilities of a chief executive, of course none of them having previously been a chief executive, would make that an untenable position, both in terms of the safety and security of the council's responsibilities and, of course, in terms of their ability to fulfil that role, given that they haven't got previous experience. So from all those points of view, it seems appropriate to seek a chief executive. With regard to the availability of suitable candidates, of course we won't know that until we go through the process. So the questions of the availability of the right candidates, the questions of when they would be available to start, are all open questions, and of course matters to be considered as part of the process of appointing anyone. So, of course, material matters to be considered, but we can't conclude them till we go through a process of seeking to appoint. So, for all that combination of reasons, it seems relevant, important and pertinent to the Council's continued improvement that it appoints a chief executive who works with the senior leadership team and on the clear understanding in the ministerial direction that if we can't appoint an appropriate chief exec, or if as a consequence of the people who come forward that it can't be delivered within a reasonable timescale, then of course the fallback position is that the managing director commissioner model continues, because until it's changed, it continues to the model until 2028. So there is a fallback position if things fail, but giving the council the opportunity and chance to appoint its chief exec in its circumstances seems a proportionate and appropriate things to do.
Yeah, a number of things there, Dr. Smith. I mean, you talk about, and you use the word strategic and impactful work. Well, one of the benefits would be, if we went down the road that I proposed, is that we would save your considerable salary, which would be very strategic and very impactful in the search to make these budget cuts that we've got to make in the following year. You know, £250,000 is not to be sneezed at. You also made the point then, and it appears to me, from what you just said, that you are looking for someone who has been a CEO. Well, that's exactly what you said. You were expecting it to be somebody who has had the experience of being a CEO. So you're ruling out, you know, a lot of potential candidates, and I don't particularly know why. And you know, with the greatest respect, I think you've got a team of people that you've assembled here. You've got Patrick, for example, who's done an amazing amount of work, and he's very knowledgeable. Your deputy is very knowledgeable, knows the borough, is very strong. And I am also assuming that were the council to appoint a CEO, but nevertheless we would still retain the 3 commissioner role, unless I missed something. So you're going to effectively have a spare part, which is the new commissioner. So what is the new commissioner going to do? Which I think fills up some of the gap that is there. That commissioner can hold a hand and provide the time and the help and the support for Dawn, Dave and Claire. So, you know, we're asking our residents to make enormous sacrifices, to go beyond what is reasonably expected of them. We're cutting services left, right and centre. I mean, we're not telling them the truth about the debt, but that's a different question for another day. And I'm sure we'll come home at some point in time, because we just put figures out that you're just picking out of a hat. But I see no meaningful, strategic or impactful, to use your words, benefit to going out and appointing a short-term CEO for at most 18 months. And we're making an assumption around this table, if we do that tonight, that the administration that comes in, whatever that colour, flavour that administration will be, would want to go down that road. I just think we're putting the cart before the horse. We're jumping. You've already made a process, and irrespective of whatever you've just said, we will have spent money on appointing an agency. That won't have happened for nothing. It will have cost money, and it's cost time. So, I just find inconsistencies in your argument all the way through. At the end of the day, with the greatest respect, you go out the door with a thank you very much and off you go, and another commissioner will come in. So, that commissioner will have a role, I'm sure. I just think this is just really wrong. It's an insult to the abilities of the people that we've got at the senior level of our team, and there are 5 or 6 really good senior officers there who could deal with it, I'm sure. And we have the example, as I pointed out at full council, of other councils, particularly Suffolk, where they've made exactly that same decision. And I appreciate they're not in intervention, but they looked at what they've got. They've got the CEO moved on, so they said, I'll tell you what, we've got the next 2 officers, we'll make them joint CEOs, we'll save the money, and we'll crack on, because these people know our council. And they've got exactly the same amount of work to do that we've got to do here. So in Suffolk, they think their staff are capable of filling the gap. Here, you're telling us you don't think our staff are capable of filling the gap, which I think is a real insult to those people.
That's Dave.
First of all, I did not say that members of staff haven't got capability to do the job. My comment is they haven't got the capacity to do the job. The work that this council's got to undertake in the next 2 years, which I've just in very broad terms outlined to you, means on top of everything else, I don't think current members of the senior leadership team have the capacity to take on that role, and certainly it would be deleterious to the council to try and spread those responsibilities between 2 or 3 officers of the council. There are also very serious governance issues associated with any proposal that seeks to place the responsibilities of the head of paid service alongside and part of either the monitoring officer's role or the Section 151 officer's role. It is a fundamental error to seek to govern in that way, and actually leads to the sort of problems this council had in the past, when you do not have the proper relationships and differentiation of roles and responsibilities between your 3 most senior statutory officers. Secondly, it seems to me in the same light that of course the council should seek to appoint somebody with the right level of experience, given the scale and type of problems this council face. It's often not said, or not said strongly enough, that this council remains with huge amounts of problems associated with the management of its debt, the amount of savings it's got to still achieve on top of the savings already achieved, and continuing to seek to improve its services and contribute fully to local government reorganisation and contribute fully to devolution and so on. So in that context, it is of a different level and scale of responsibility than simply managing spread between different members of the senior leadership team. I'd also obviously remind members that at the end of the day, this is a commissioner's appointment. The commissioners have the responsibility under the directions to make appointments to any and all senior appointments, including its chief executive. It has been the approach of this group of commissioners, myself, Gavin, and more latterly Denise, to use those powers in reserve and work with members of the council in a way that enables a full and frank evaluation of candidacies, and ensure, as far as we're able, that we can reach a consensus. I think that's a proper way of doing it, but it isn't the only way, and certainly commissioners do have the responsibility at the end of the day to make the appointment. In terms of your comment about the commissioning model, you might wish to note the Minister's last letter to the Council, where the Minister sets out that there will be a review of the commissioning model during the, I think it talks about the summer, in order that the Secretary of State can give consideration to the right model in support of whatever position the Council is then in, both generally but more specifically in terms of whether it's been able to make an appointment to its Chief Executive. So there are no assumptions about the nature of the commissioning model. Intervention is clearly going to continue till the end of Thurrock's legal existence. But how that's populated in terms of commissioners will be part of the review that commissioners are being asked to undertake and advise the Secretary of State on as part of the review. And clearly, the administration itself will be consulted on for its view of that at the time.
Yeah, I'll come back very briefly. I'll come back very briefly, Chair. I mean, yeah, it's an opinion, and that's all it is. You know, I've got an opinion. You've got an opinion, and you know, as I say, I find it strange that it can be done in Suffolk, but it can't be done in Thurrock, and I don't fundamentally see many differences there at the end of the day, because they've got the same challenges that we've got. And that what they don't have is a backup team, as I say, of Alex and the team of Patrick and that whole department there, who are well versed and probably among the best to deal with LGR. Although they obviously clearly got the numbers wrong in terms of what they put forward to the government by a country mile, seeing as it got chucked out this morning. You know, I disagree fundamentally with what you say. We should be looking at making cost savings. We should be looking at making sure this council can do as good a job as it possibly can do for the limited time that it's got. And let's make no bones about it, it's going to be chaos next year through nobody's fault, because you're going to have inexperienced councillors coming in and being asked to make decisions. I'd rather you actually did the thing properly and made a decision as three commissioners. We're going to scrap this procedure. We're going to find somebody and we're going to appoint them and put somebody in on a 2-year mandate on a contract and do it now and show that you've got the gut, you know, your guts to go with your own opinion. If you think that's what it needs and it needs an independent CEO to do it, you go out and get one now instead of faffing about through months of doing this and spending all this money. You know, make some decisions. Because I tell you what, we suffer in this council because there are so few decisions being actually made that are positive. Because you dither and dither and dither, like we did over thirds.
Councillor Coxall.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Dave, for the report this evening. I think my concerns that I've had with I've mentioned to commissioners beforehand. I wasn't really a fan of the council taking this lead to appoint its own chief executive. I actually share some of the issues and concerns that Councillor Spate has raised in terms of timing, and just in terms of how long a candidate, any successful candidate will have in post. It doesn't quite seem reasonable that we go through the process. But I've lost that argument. The Minister has made his decision. With Thurrock is now going to have the power to appoint itself and that its own chief executive, and commissioners as a member of staff, that is end of the day it's a commissioner appointment. So if the council and members don't make that decision, you'll make the decision for us. And at this point I don't really see there's no other position I can see to go. I think where we are now, we go out, we look in April and see if we do find someone. If we find someone it's actually exceptional, it'll be for next generation of members to interview and debate and decide whether or not they want to proceed with that appointment. I may be surprised, and if not, I think my comfort to my words will keep the MD's, the model stays as it is. I think that's my appreciation is that we are in the most extreme model of intervention. It doesn't quite reflect perhaps where we are now in terms of transformation in the council, but there's no other path to go. I don't see the harm in going forward. And if we find someone that we can appoint quickly, we can do it. We don't, we stay where we are. I wouldn't like to perjure myself on any idea of what happens post-May, but perhaps the Minister will take a view on any new administration that it may feel needs additional support and may decide to keep the MDC model. Who knows? But that's for a later administration and commissioners to have that discussion. But at the moment, I don't see any issue straight away to go ahead with the appointment. Although, yes, I was against it. We've got the power now. It's a direction from the government and the ministers. We don't really have anything else to say on the matter.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I think I'm in the same sort of vein as Councillor Coxall, really. So in terms of the Chief Exec, I'm quite happy for it to go ahead. I would have liked the timetable to have been a bit shorter, but we are where we are, unfortunately, because of the elections are coming, and I totally get all of that. The other thing as well, I think, for me, is I would like a experienced chief exec to come in. I think where we are at the moment, any intervention, even though I do understand yours around Suffolk, but we're